That sounds like something.
Okay, page 588, Parsha Shemini.
Yeah.
It begins by Yom Shemini. It was on the 8th day. The 8th day of what? It's the 8th day of the inauguration of the Mishkan. They had 8 days where they had specific rituals and sacrifices and so forth that they had to do in order to make the Mishkan ready to go. And it wasn't just simply preparing it, it was dedicating it so that its purposes were done correctly. So this was 7 days, and for the first 7 out of the 8 days, Moshe was the high priest. He was the Kohen Gadol. And then it comes to the 8th day, and that's where we are. Then it says, it was on the 8th day, Kara Moshe Aaron. Moshe calls to his brother Aaron, Ulevanov, and to Aaron's children, Ulezikne Israel, and to the heads of the Jewish people. And he says, V'yomer el Aaron kach lecha egel. He now tells Aaron to go and do all of the aspects of what a Kohen Gadol does. That means up until this point, Moshe was acting as Kohen Gadol, even though Aaron officially was the Kohen Gadol. But now on the 8th day, Aaron is now instructed to go out there and do it. Right up until now, Moshe was, now you go and do it. And the commentaries say, why is that? And it says originally it was because Aaron, who knew he was supposed to do it, this was the whole purpose of what he was doing. It says that he was humbled, he was embarrassed because of his role in the golden calf. And that the Mishkan, the temple, comes in order to fix that sin. So he felt a little bit like, I'm one of the people who was behind the problem, and now I'm going to be the one who atones for it. He felt a bit funny about that. So Moshe had to come and say, no, you come, this is what you were created for. And it says, take an egel. You should know that God has atoned for you for the sin of the calf. So you are now going to take a calf, and you're going to atone for the Jewish people. So here we see that change of the leadership is from Moshe to Aaron at this point in this area. So he tells them he should take these various sacrifices and he should present them and inaugurate the Mishkan. So then they took what Moshe had commanded to the front of the tent, and the entire assembly approached, and they stood before Hashem, and Moshe said, this is the thing that Hashem has commanded you to do, then the glory of Hashem will appear to you. And Moshe tells Aaron, come near to the altar and perform the service. So right here you can see Moshe is pushing him to do it because he feels humble, he feels humiliated that how could he do it. So here he's telling him he has to go out and be the one who does it. Right? This is telling you a number of things. First thing is that you'd say, like Moshe is basically saying to Aaron, according to the commentaries, look, go out and do this. This is what you were created for. God brought you into this world to be the Kohen Gadol. Right? Go out and do it. And yes, things happen that makes you feel that maybe you're inadequate. He says, but that's the point. And the expression is that this is what you were made for. That's what Moshe uses those words. The commentaries tell us that this is a life lesson for people. That, like, they tell a story that when Rabbi Shmuel Salant was approached to become the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, it says the chief rabbi had died, and the heads of the city came to see him, and they said to him about all the troubles that were going on in the Jewish community. People didn't have money, and people didn't have jobs, and there was problems with with husbands and wives. All kinds of things were going on. So he asked them, "Why are you coming to me? Like, why are you? I live here. I know what's going on in the community. Why are you coming to tell me everything that's going on?" And they said, "Because we want you to become the next chief rabbi." And that the important point of your becoming a chief rabbi is that you should ask that question. In other words, in order to be a leader among the Jewish people, you have to be someone who is humble enough to realize that you are not necessarily the leader, right? It's a person who's arrogant would say, the king dies, I'll be the new king. I should be the new king. I have everything the king needs. I have everything the high priest needs. I have everything the president, the rabbi, whatever it is needs. That's me. So of course they're going to come to me, right? But that's not what we want. We want somebody who would not think that everybody would come to him, even if he's worthy of it. But he's not arrogant, And that's what we see here in the words, that Moshe tells Aaron, God wants you to go do this, and Aaron still hesitates. We see this earlier as well, when God says to Moshe, I want you to go to Pharaoh, and he says, I want to go to Pharaoh? Who am I to go to Pharaoh? And God says, I'll be with you. And from this we understand that as soon as Moshe said, how can I go to Pharaoh? God said, you're the one. That's how I know you're the one. Because you're humble, because you realize that it's you with me doing this. It's not you. It's not because you're the most handsome, you're the smartest, you're the best with money, you're the best with people. No, it's because you realize that you have talents that come from God and that God is going to help you. That's why you'll be the perfect Jewish leader. Right? That's the significance of that statement, and that's a significant thing for all of us, to realize that we have such a job. And it only comes to us because of that. Right, then it goes through and tells you some of the things he actually does. And then if we look now on 590, 591, in verse 15, it says, he brought near the offering of the people, he took the sin offering goat that was for the people and slaughtered it. So the commentaries ask, here he is in day 1, right, it's 8th day, but it's Aaron's first day, and he's told he has to offer a sacrifice of a goat, right, and a goat is a sin offering. And the commentaries tell us that this is for a specific sin, the sin of the brothers selling Yosef down to Egypt. That's the sin, right? And we know it was a sin. It was wrong for them to do this. They wanted to kill him. Eventually, they were convinced not to kill him, instead to make him into a slave. And they were taking their brother and they were selling him out. Right? They're going to put him in jail the rest of his life. Get rid of him. And that was wrong. And because all of the Jewish people came from all of these brothers, right? They're all our forefathers. So therefore, the Jewish people need to atone for the sin of selling him. What was the sin? It was hatred. That they hated him. Because they hated him, they were able to rationalize doing anything they want. And this is how it is. I see it all the time when I'm in counseling. If you have a husband and wife, and they are in love with each other, but they're having trouble, anything they do, the other one can overlook. Anything. If I love you, I can overlook the fact that you get up late. I can overlook the fact that you burn my toast. I overlook the fact that this or that, or one of my craziness, right? Because I love you. But if I'm mad at you, if I'm upset with you, then whatever you do is bad. It's terrible. How am I supposed to live with a person who doesn't make the bed in the morning? How do I live with a person who puts their pajamas on the floor? How do I live with a person who burns my toast every day? Right? It's the same act, and it's not that this act is any different. It's the frame of mind of the person. Right? The person feels that. When you have a relationship between people, and it's a good relationship, they can put up with anything. And when it's not a good relationship, then they can't. They're unable to put up with things, right? That idea is the idea of the hatred that we understand that the brothers had. The brothers were prepared that under any circumstance they were going to get rid of Yosef. They were going to sell him. They were going to kill him. Why? Because of whatever he did, we can't have him here anymore. And that wasn't simply the sin of selling him.
Jealousy also.
What?
Jealousy also.
Right, but it's all tied into one.
To the hatred.
So all of that was because of their dislike, everything else happened. So therefore we have to atone for the sin of the hatred. There's an actual sin in the Torah called sinus chinam, baseless hatred, hating somebody for a reason that's not a mitzvah, just hating somebody. And so we have to ask a question about this, which is, like, why now? This happened before they went to Egypt. Okay, so I understand. Before they went to Egypt, it was the brothers themselves. There was no Jewish people to atone for anything. So, okay, they go down to Egypt. Now, God's going to take you out of Egypt, and he gives a sacrifice to them, right? The Passover offering. And he has all these miracles going on. So why don't we do it then? Why doesn't God say, you're going to do the Passover offering with a goat? And the goat will not only show the Egyptians that you're leaving, but it will also atone for the sin of Yosef, of what they did to Yosef by selling him. Why don't we do that? We don't. We ignore it. Suddenly we not only that, we leave Egypt, we go through the splitting of the Red Sea, we receive the Torah, we go into the desert. Now we're traveling through the desert, with the sin of the golden calf. Now we get the Mishkan, right? This portable temple, and now we atone for the sin of Yosef. Like, where were you yesterday? Like, what's going on here? What has it got to do with it? It should have been done, years ago. So the answer is that it's actually very appropriate, because what is the Mishkan? The Mishkan is known as, it's the traveling temple. But what is it known to do? The purpose of the Mishkan was to unite the Jewish people. Up until that point, a Jew who wanted to give a sacrifice could give a sacrifice anywhere they wanted. You see it in the Torah. Abraham wants to thank God, so he goes outside his house and makes a sacrifice. Yitzchak wants to thank God, so he goes down by the well and he makes a sacrifice. Right? But suddenly now you have to give sacrifices only in one place. This one location is the only place that we can give it, right? Just like us. We can only give sacrifices in the temple when the temple's built. I can't go in my backyard and make a barbecue and call it a sacrifice. It has to be, right, just in that way. So that's the point, that the Mishkan, the traveling temple, traveled in the center of the Jewish people. That's where it went. Like, everybody was around it. It symbolically and literally was put there in order to unite the Jews as a nation, so that we were all united. And you can't be united if you're fighting with each other. So the Mishkan is a symbol of the peace that is expected among Jews to be with each other. And therefore, since we are in the last day of the inauguration of that traveling temple, the thing we have to make sure is that we are not carrying with us the effects of the sin of hatred, which will counteract the unity that the temple is making. And therefore, if you have a united temple, and you have a people who have atoned for hatred, and they are therefore united, you have one temple, right? One Mishkan, right? Traveling temple, and one people, and one God, and one Torah. It's all unified. So therefore, it is totally appropriate that this is the time that they atone for that sin, because now they're on the path to Jewish unity. And here we see how really serious and important this is, and why it's so odd that it's overlooked by most of the world. That the answer to the question, and it makes a difference what your question is. The answer to the question is unity. Whatever question you ask, why does this happen to the Jews? Why does that happen to the Jews? Why are we having problems here? Why is it today we've got more people learning Torah in yeshivas and in other schools than probably in modern history for thousands of years? Why is it that we've got organizations that will help people with anything that happens in your life? You have sick children, we've got an organization. You don't have enough money to pay your bills, we've got an organization that'll help you. You need help in the house, with older person needs with, like, say, taking care of their house, we got an organization that'll help you. We've got organizations that will come and help everyone. We do all of this. It's really true. Our community does all of this. So why isn't the Mashiach here? Right? God says, you follow my Torah, Mashiach will come. Now our goal for following the Torah is not to bring Mashiach. Mashiach is a gift that God gives us to make it easier for us to live as Jews. But the prerequisite of it is that we have to live as Jews with difficulty, so then we do that, then we can live as Jews easier. And we're doing it. We're learning Torah, we're giving tzedakah, we started all kinds of organizations to help people. There's nobody starving here. So where's Mashiach? Right? We have to wonder. It's a good question. It makes me wonder if there's like a flaw in our belief, because we're doing it. We're doing it. The answer is that we're not doing it. Like I said before, no matter what the question is, the answer is Jewish unity. If we're going to fight with each other, and the Ashkenaz and the Sfard, and the Hasidic and the non-Hasidic, and Lubavitch and this one, and that one and Lubavitch, and that one and this one, and modern Orthodox and right-wing Orthodox, and then just this kind of Jew and that kind of Jew, and we don't get along with each other, then that's the answer to the question. That's the problem.
No unity. No unity.
That's right. It's not what the Torah is telling us is that learning Torah is extremely important. Following the Torah is extremely important, right? But if you want to know what the key is to accomplish the goal, is to have unity. We know this The temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago because we did not have unity. It says explicitly, this is why. Right? Not because we didn't have organizations to help people eat. Not because we didn't support the poor. It's not because we didn't learn Torah. We did all that. And yet we still lost the temple because we didn't have unity. Today we have the same problem. Because we don't have unity. That's the answer to the question. And why is it that every rabbi is not yelling and screaming about it? Why is it that every Jew is not saying, we have to fix this? I don't know. But all that does is prove to me that it really is the answer. Because if the Yetzer Hara, if the negativity of the world is going to attack something, it's going to attack the most effective thing. And that is the most effective thing. And the one area that we are the worst at is this. Like, the only time you ever see Jews getting along with each other is when someone really big and tough is trying to hurt us. Right? When the Nazis came around and they wanted to kill the Jews helped each other, made no difference who they were. Right? Today, we open up schools for our kids because each kid has a little bit different Jewish philosophy, and we can't have them mixing with the other ones. Yeah. Right? You see, our success is causing our failure at the same time. We are losing on Jewish unity, and that's what it's telling us here. The Mishkan was created as a symbol of Jewish unity. In order for it to be effective, we have to atone for the sin of not having Jewish unity, and therefore we atone for it. Now the Mishkan will help. And now we're in the same predicament again 2,000 years later. So what do we do? Should we learn Torah more, give more charity? What should we do? We should have Jewish unity. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that learning Torah is not important, or doing mitzvahs is not. They're all way important, more than I can ever understand. But we're seeing that the flaw in our goal, is coming because of a lack of unity, of not getting along, of fighting, of just being disparaging, of not respecting each other, of I think judging our success by how bad somebody else can be. Right? It's like one time one of my sons says to me, what do you think? I've never been arrested. And I said, since when do we use the criminal law system as our judgment of who's good and who's not good? Right? That's like the lowest possible denominator. That I'm a good person. I'm a really good moral person because I've never been arrested. I said, that's not the way you judge it, right? You could say I'm not a stupid criminal because I'm a smart criminal because I haven't been arrested. But you don't tell me that you're an ethical good person because you haven't been arrested, right? Because that the level is so low, right? We have to say, when it comes to unity, that just because we're not killing each other in the streets and we're not beating up each other and we're not right, the fact is this kind of stuff's been going on for so long, we get used to it. We're used to not having unity unless somebody is trying to beat us up, right? And that's why it keeps happening. Right? We ask all the time, why is it that there's a constant anti-Semitism? Am I not learning Torah? Am I not giving tzedakah? Am I not doing what I'm supposed to do? And the answer is that there is a constant anti-Semitism because God wants us to be unified, and we have shown God that the only way we'll be unified is if we're in trouble. So therefore, He wants us to be unified, He'll make us in trouble. And when we show Him that when we're not in trouble and when things are good, we can be unified, we won't have trouble anymore. It won't happen. We won't have that. We won't see people killed in front of our eyes, and we won't have our money stolen from us and be, subjugated. And I mean, I think, there are people here who've lived through longer than me, but I would think that we're about to see this again. The world is not the world it was 5 years ago, and it looks to me like today you can't walk in many parts of Europe with a yarmulke. My whole life I could. I remember when I was a kid, why I got into my head that I had to wear a yarmulke as a kid, I don't know. I mean, we weren't all that observant. We were on our way, but we weren't that much. I remember wearing a yarmulke and a woman coming to me and knocking it off my head, but not anti-Semitic. It was a Jewish woman saying to me, "Are you crazy? How can you walk in the street like that? Someone's going to hurt you. They're going to do something to you. Or you can't go like that." Right? Because she came, she was an older woman. This was like in the early 60s. So this is a woman who lived through the war, lived through probably also lived through the Depression, and saw what the world was like to Jews. And she's saying to this boy, you want to get yourself killed in the streets? Right? Of course it wasn't going to happen. But in her mind, she was afraid of that because she'd seen that with her own eyes. It's happening again. Right? We're seeing it again. And all over Europe it's happening. I don't know how long it's going to be before in North America we have to start watching what neighborhoods we go to because they're going to start with us, or that we have to apologize for being Jewish. Right? It's happening, and if I ask you to give me a reason why it's happening, you really can't. You ask the politicians why, they can't. You ask the philosophers, they can't. You can't say why. What did we Jews do? What has Israel done? It was so bad that the whole world is condemning it, and yet at the same time the whole world is benefiting from it. Like much of our medical advancement, much of our technological advancements, much of our security is coming from Israel, right? And at the same time they're saying Israel is terrible and it's apartheid and it's killing people, and time and again they keep proving that the examples that you're seeing on the news are fake, right? Where, like, I remember seeing the photographs where they'd have a bomb, show a bomb that goes off in the Palestinian area that the Israelis had sent a bomb and it killed all these people. And then you start looking at the pictures, and someone starts who studies this shows you 4 or 5 pictures in a row from different bombings, and the same teddy bears in each picture, or the same kid wearing the same T-shirts in each picture. And you're saying, wait a minute, how is that possible that the same kid can get killed 5 different times in 2 different years?
And he's still alive.
Right? And what we find is that these pictures are I don't mean that Israel is perfect, but that these pictures are faked. Does anyone do anything? No. It's just like, okay, what's fine, but what's next? Or the Palestinians will go and dance in the streets when something bad happens in America, and what do the Americans say? Well, it's because you persecuted them so badly that they act this way. You have to understand. That's not a good answer. That's stupid.
Absolutely.
Right? First thing is you're presuming that we persecuted them so badly, and then secondly is because someone is persecuted, they don't have obligations to act human. They can kill people, and you just say it's okay. But now you turn that around and you have it happen with a Jew, it never could happen. Right? The opposite idea. That's because we don't understand why there's anti-Semitism in the world. But the answer is unity.
I went to hear Chief Rabbi Sachs the other night and also read, what he said in Montreal. And he said not only must we have unity amongst us, but we must also get people on board with us to help us. He said, because we ourselves will never manage to fight anti-Semitism alone. We've got to befriend our non-Jewish, whether they're Muslims and they prepare, they're the moderate people, and the non-Jews like Christians United for Israel and all that, to have them help us to try and get rid of this terrible.
It's a good point, but I think that the essence is that if we act in accordance with unity, we won't need to do that. I mean, it's true that they would be helpful and we shouldn't ignore them if they come, but that the anti-Semitism is a direct result of our lack of unity, not a direct result of how Israel is acting, not a direct result about a couple of Jews who decide that they're going to steal money from millions of people. It's not why anti-Semitism exists. Because if you look at it, anti-Semitism says that we're rich, right, at the expense of the non-Jews. Anti-Semitism says that we are poor and sucking the money out of every country that we're in, right? Opposites. Anti-Semitism says that we're an enemy to fascists, and they also say we're an enemy to communists, and we're an enemy to capitalists. We can't be enemies to all of them.
Absolutely.
Right? Anti-Semitism says that we're dirty, right? We don't take care of ourselves, and we're arrogant, right? We don't. Anti-Semitism also says that we are rich, and we spend our money on luxuries, and we do opposites, right? All of these opposites cannot really be true, right? It can't be. And the reason why it's so absurd, it's so crazy to anybody who thinks about it, is because it's a message from God saying, I'm going to make things difficult. If the only way that you can be unified is by having things difficult, I'm going to make it difficult. But I'm going to make it difficult in a way that you cannot say this is logical. If the whole world said that Jews, control the economy, and therefore they throw us out, and everyone agreed on that, that could be logical. But if you got half the world saying we control the economy, and the other half of the world saying that we're destroying the economy, so then it's telling you that there's something wrong. It doesn't make sense. It's absurd, right?
There's also that where they said, now get out of Europe, go to your own country, go and live there. So we went to our own country and we're living there. Now they're telling us it's not our country. Go back to Europe.
Right. So all of these things are totally illogical. That's my point. And God is saying, I'm going to be a parent to you. This is going to happen. You're going to see it happen. And all you got to do is open your eyes, and you're not going to be able to say that there's a reason for this. You can't say that it's because we have too much money, not enough money, we're too powerful and not powerful, we only care about ourselves, we only care about others. Whatever it is, the world is going to say both things to tell you that the answer has got nothing to do with the problem. It's no different than like if you have a dog that makes a mess in the house, you take your newspaper and you hit the dog with the newspaper. What does the dog do? He bites the newspaper. Well, what good's that going to do? The newspaper's not hitting them, you are hitting them, right? So it's the same thing, right? Anti-Semitism is the newspaper. God is standing behind it, and the newspaper is hitting us. So what do? We attack the newspaper. We say, oh, anti-Semitism is bad, but anti-Semitism makes no sense. You can't attack it. It's not. You're never going to win. You have to go to the source. What's the source? It's the lack of unity. So therefore, we have to atone for ourselves. It says, the first thing, when we have this vehicle called the Mishkan to create unity among the Jews, the first thing we have to do is walk in with a clean slate. And therefore, we atone for the sin of the selling of Yosef, both literally and symbolically, to tell us from this point on, we ought to get along. And if we do that, everything will be good. And when we don't do it, it won't be good. That is a separate key to get to the answer to the problem. It's separate from learning Torah, from charity, from all the other things which are extremely important, and without them we also would fail. But they are not sufficient without unity. But the lack of unity means that the Torah study and the acts of kindness that we do are not real. That's what it really means. That if I take 10% of my money to feed the poor, and then I insult the poor, then I'm not getting the message of what my charity is not doing anything. If I'll give 10% of my money to the poor, but I don't want to see them. I don't want to see those people. I don't want to associate with them. But that's just not going to work. Right? That's why the Rambam says, if a person wants to celebrate a holiday, the difference between celebrating a holiday with a festive meal or just filling your stomach is if you have poor people at your table. The Rambam says, how do you celebrate a holiday? Is you have all this great food and you have to have poor people at your table. If you don't have poor people at your table, you're just filling your stomach. You're not celebrating a holiday. A holiday has to be celebrated with them. So it doesn't always necessarily mean they have to literally be at your table, but they've got to be taken care of. It means that certainly you shouldn't be embarrassed to have them at your table, but it means that if you only have seats for 10 people at your table and you got a family of 10, you can't have them always at your table, but you can pay for them. You can make sure they're not poor. You make sure they have food. Make sure that they feel that you respect them and care for them. That will do it. That's what the Rambam says, and it makes perfect sense to us. That's the bottom line. The unity that we are looking at, and the lack of unity that is expressed in our people, is the problem, and that's what he's saying right here. Isn't
that a bit depressing? Because there will never be unity.
Sure there will. We just have to want to.
At the end.
No, that's the forced unity. We can do it.
How?
Well, we have to. First is we have to want to. Secondly is we have to learn that we have more similarities than differences, and that we have to celebrate our differences. The biggest problem, I think, for Jewish unity in our time is a person's lack of self-worth. I don't really believe that I'm worthy of anything, that I'm special, that I have a dignity, and because of that, how do I give myself this dignity? By knocking you down. Because I'm not worthy to be able to challenge you one-to-one. You're good and I'm good and I want to be better and you're going to be better, and we challenge each other. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. But if I think I'm worthless, I'll never be able to do that. So then how am I going to feel good? Is by making you feel like less than me, right? In other words, that's what Lashon Hara is. That's what talking bad about people is. Two companies. I got Macy's and Gimbel's, right? Two department stores. So I can run Macy's and make Macy's the best store in the country, and I'll outdo Gimbel's, right? Or I can just stay mediocre and make everybody and say terrible things about Gimbel's to make everyone else think that Gimbel's is even worse than mediocre, and then they'll come to me, right? So I can either be good at what I do by becoming good at what I do, or making sure everyone else thinks that you're worse at it. Well, that's what we're doing, because I believe that we really believe we have an insecurity about ourselves. So therefore, the only way that we feel good about ourselves is if we can get others to say that we're good. And the best way to get others to say that we're good is to say that the other person's bad. Another person is bad, right? If it's me, let's say both me and Granny, I want to be president of the shul. So I can either show everybody how great I am, or I can let everyone know how bad Granny is. And either way, I'm going to win, right? But one of them is a good way, a positive, right? Because she can also show how good she is. The other way is terrible, because look at the politics. This is what's going on in America now. Right? What do? Does take Donald Trump, all right? Forget the crazy stuff he says, right? But does anyone know what he's going to do? Does he ever tell you what he's going to do? No. All he tells you is what they're not going to do. The other people are not going to do this, and he tells you crazy stuff he's going to do. He doesn't mean he's not going to build a wall between Mexico and make Mexico pay for it. And at one time he's going to build a wall between Canada and make Canada pay for it. He's not going to do that. There's no concept of doing such a thing. It's stupid. It's a rallying cry. But where is he really effective? Is by making the other guy look bad. If he makes his opponent look bad, then he looks good, right? But he's doing it so much that nobody knows what he means, what he stands for, who he is. That's what politics is doing. That's what they call dirty politics. Mm-hmm. But we live our lives that way. That's what we all do. If we can convince ourselves that I'm worthy, and the fact that you are also worthy does not take away from who I am, that will be a first big step towards unity. Because then I can care for you, I can like you, I can respect you, and I can still know that I'm good at what I do. And that you also could be good, and I can still try to be better. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. But for me to think that I'm going to say that you're cheap, so that when I'm cheap, people will say I'm not as cheap as you. Right? Well, that's not the way to be. I should be generous, right? And you should be generous. And if you're generous and I'm generous, so I'm going to work to be more generous than you. Right? Nothing wrong with that, being more, but not knocking you down. And that's really, I think, where it happens. I think our media does that. I think our immediate response, our emotions cause us to do that. I think society we live in is based on that. If politics is based on that, then everything is. If we see the President of the United States doing that, and the Prime Minister of Canada doing that, so then when I want to go do business, I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, not that my ketchup company is the best company, I'm going to say yours is the worst. Then of course everyone will buy mine, not because it's best, because it's not as bad as yours. That's the idea. And I think that if we can get people to really buy into this, then I think we'll have taken a great step forward. Right? Also to realize that you don't have to be the same to be good. Right? There's an idea of unity, but unity, I believe unity only works when you have the idea of diversity. That I can be unified with you, but we can all be different. We're all different people, different likes, different dislikes, different things about us, right? But we're unified. We all get along. We all have the same goal in life. We all want to be able to take care of our families. We all want to have good lives. We all want to be holy people. We all want, that we should live as good Jews. We all want that. Right? So we unify in such a way that's really how we can accomplish it. That's how we can do it. But realizing that each one of us is different. That we're all different. And we don't insult the differences. We celebrate them. Right? you go to a shul and you dress in a certain way, and I go to shul and dress a different way, and my grandfather dressed the way I do, and my great grandfather did, and yours did the way you did. So I'm going to make fun of you because you don't dress like me, or you're not so religious because you don't look like me. It's not true. It just isn't. And that's where our downfall is because we think that in order to have unity, it means we have to be the same. We don't have to be the same. We have to be able to celebrate our differences, not insult our differences. And when we do that, that'll also bring us to unity. So, I mean, that's why I'm not telling you anything I haven't said a million times here. This is what that's what our shul stands for. That's what we try to accomplish. And I can't always make it happen, right? But I try to educate people on that. And it's very hard, only because so few people are doing that. A lot of other shuls, they're wonderful places, right? We've got lots of wonderful shuls in this neighborhood. And anywhere you go, you ask the shul or you ask the rabbi, isn't unity the most important thing? They'll all agree. The question is, how much time do they spend on it? Right? It doesn't make them bad that they don't spend the time on it. It's just they have other priorities or other things. I think that is the singular priority, and therefore everything else is secondary to it, in my mind. And not everybody agrees with me, and that's fine, they don't have to. But I think that's one of the reasons why we don't have it today, is because it's a necessity that it has to be the singular most important aspect of religious Jewish life, is to get along. And, that's it. I mean, I try to do it in my own life, and I mess up sometimes, but I try, so that people should know that I respect them, I care for them. And it's not because I'm anyone special, I'm just emulating what I think we all should do. I mean, we all should be like that. And I know I fail. I mean, I know I have bad days, and days where I don't feel like I'm anybody special and I got to knock other people down to feel good, or days that I'm having a bad day and I don't like what you do, or I'm suspicious of you, or I think you said something bad about me and so I don't want to associate with you, and I don't even know that you did, I just think you did, instead of dealing with it, right? So that's really what it is. And so it's not a small problem. It's a big problem, and it's not a simple problem. It's very complicated, but there are basic things, and I think the most important one is that we should know our self-worth. We should not judge it based on other people. We should know it on ourselves, and we should realize that the reason that God created us differently is because He wants us to celebrate the differences, not to become the same. So we all don't have to wear black coats and white shirts. We don't all have to wear the same shapel. We don't all have to pray exactly the same way. We have to go within the laws of Torah, but there are many paths on the road of Torah, and you can take the path that you want. You want to be modern Orthodox, you want to be Hasidic, you want to be Mizrahi, you want to be not Zionist, you want to be Lithuanian style, you want to, have a Rebbe, not have a Rebbe, all fine. Just be real, be who you are, and let other people be who they are, and it'll work.
Be image.
That's my rant. I say it all the time. That's what the parsha is getting at, and it's very important. And I try to live that way, mostly because I want people to see it. Right? I just had it recently. That sometimes people will say that I won't go into a confrontation with people sometimes, and they'll say it's because I'm afraid to. I don't want to have a fight. It's not really true. My natural personality does allow me to do that. I do it, just like anyone else. I won't let myself, as often as I can control myself, but I won't let myself get into these petty fights, because I believe we need to teach each other that's how you live. That's how you should be. Right? I just had recently, the two guys were believing that they had to have the same seat in the shul. Right? One guy's been in the seat for 10 years and then didn't come for a while. The other guy started coming, he's been in the seat for 5 years. Then the guy from 10 years comes back and he wants a seat. Since there's no basis in Jewish law for that, they have to have the same seat. You have to be within the same area, but not the same seat. So one of the guys came to me and said, what do I do? I've been sitting in that seat for so long, now this guy comes and he's taking the seat. So now the other guy could have come and said the same thing to me. He didn't, but he could have. So I said, well, with all rights, you probably could say it's your seat, right? Because you have been sitting there for the last number of years. You could say it's your seat. But what will it accomplish? Let's say you do, right? Jewish law says you could sit next to it and you're still in the same place. That's not a problem. So all you're really doing is pushing this person. And what are they going to do? They're going to push back. You're going to have a fight, right? And one of you will end up in the seat, and one of you will end up leaving the shul, right? For nothing that the shul did, right? Because you get upset. I said, on the other hand, if you don't fight the person and you make it obvious that even though you think you're right, you are not going to start up with this person and you're going to let them have it, even if they're wrong. Even you're not saying they're wrong, but even if they're wrong and they shouldn't have done it, you're not going to do it. You're not going to go to war with them. You're going to let them do it. You'll be the bigger person, and most likely people will notice, and most likely people will copy it and do the same themselves. That's how you accomplish. That's how you do it, and that's just happened this week, right? And it's not easy to convince someone. It's not easy to convince a person to say, when you say to them, don't start up with them. Even if you're right, don't start up with them. What good is it? You know? And I could even say you're 100% right, and that person's 100% wrong. But what do you gain, and what do you lose? And what's the purpose? But the problem is we all agree, but we all do it. Right? Me too. We all do it. We all do it. I also feel insecure. What's that person saying about me? What are they doing? How come that person hasn't come to shul for a few weeks? Anybody in particular? So why is that? And I also get insecure like anyone else, right? Maybe they found someone else they like better. Maybe they have a better place, and then my whole shul's going to leave. I'm going to have nobody here. I'm not going to have a job, right? I can make myself crazy, just like anybody else can with any business, any job, right? But we have to realize that none of us are so important that everybody else makes their life decisions based on us. Right? Nobody's. I would say that somebody might leave the shul because they don't like me. Right? That I do take a big role in the shul, but I would say that the chances are that that's probably not the real reason. That's probably one of many reasons, but that I'm not so important that people are going to dedicate themselves, right, and change their entire life because I said a wrong word. Not that I should say the wrong word. I shouldn't say the wrong word. But let's say I did. Let's say I got angry. I've had to apologize to people. I get angry and I say something I shouldn't say. Right? Now that person, now they're going to leave the shul because of that. Chances are, if they've had 100 interactions with me and 99 of them were good and one of them was bad, they probably won't leave the shul because of it. Right? Probably not. I'm not that important. None of us are that important that somebody is going to do this. So when we say, like, oh, we walk into a room, you ever have it happen? You walk into a room and there's two people you're friends with are talking and they suddenly stop and you think, no, they're talking about me. Right? They're probably not. What they're probably doing is talking about something that's embarrassing, and if you hear them, they're going to be embarrassed. Right? Imagine the two of them are talking about a third person. Right? About how stupid that person is and how ugly she is, or how she dresses badly, or how he doesn't know what he's doing, right? And you walk in the room. You're not that person that they're talking about. They're embarrassed, though, that they're talking about that person in front of you. So they'll stop immediately, right? And what do we think? They're talking about me, right? Why? Because we're insecure. It goes back to the first reason that I said. Right? That's what happens. So we have to realize we're not that important. That say people do talk about us sometimes, but most of the time it's not really the fact. Usually it's something else, and even when it is the fact, you're usually not the problem. They're usually the problem themselves, right? That they feel it in their head. That everyone's talking about me. I walk into a room and suddenly everybody's quiet, and they were all talking about me. You can imagine, like, you go to a concert and and everyone's cheering, and then suddenly stop cheering, and you walk in. And you're coming in the back door, like, right? Oh, they were all cheering, and now that I come in, they're sad. So nobody's cheering anymore. Like, that's the same idea. So that's what's going on here, and that's why I think it's really so important.
A friend of mine used to say, I once mentioned, goodness gracious, I better do this or that. What are people going to say? She says, what makes you think you're so important that anybody's talking about you?
Well, there are things, I don't know if you've noticed, sadly, there was yesterday, there was, you know how the media, not the media, but like the, what do they call it, like the personal media, like Facebook and stuff, social media. So somebody got a clip from a news report that shows a basketball player in Toronto, and right behind him is this Orthodox Jew sitting and watching the game, and he's picking his nose. But it's filmed. It's filmed, and he's doing it for like 3 minutes.
Right.
And it's the whole film has it. So when you watch this film, right, you're supposed to be watching the basketball player, but nobody's watching him. They're watching the guy. Now, imagine if you're that guy. Right? I know that guy. I know who he is. He's much younger than me. I know who he is. And like people here know him. Some of you even know that guy.
My God.
And that's right. Imagine how humiliating that is for him. That stuff, right? That's, you know, that happened. You know, people will do things, right? And in that case, people are going to talk about it. But in a week, they're not gonna. No one's gonna remember. In a week, right? Maybe his friends will make fun of the rest of his life. You know, his friends will say, there he is. But me, in 3 weeks, I'm going to forget about it, and I'm going to see that guy, and I'm not going to even think about it. I'm not going to not say anything. I won't even think about saying something. But in his mind, the rest of his life, everyone sees him and they think about him that way. That's how he's going to be. That's how everyone is. Right? We have to get beyond that. We have to. We're not that important that people are going to be thinking about us all the time. And if and even if it happens sometimes, right, pretty much everyone knows that it's just luck that I didn't get caught on film picking my nose, or, you know, pulling at my pants, or, you know, whatever I did. You know, it's fortunate, that's all, because we all do it. It all happens. It's just some of us are a little more discreet than others. Right? This guy was sad, had no idea he was being filmed, and I was in the shul yesterday, and I was just here, you know, in the office, and I turned on my thing, and it sent me to Facebook, and on Facebook was that video. I felt very bad for the guy, but in 2 weeks no one's going to remember. Right? That's a fact. That's how it works. All right, let's go on a bit. Okay, we have on 593, we have a very historic and sad occasion here. We have the story of Aaron's 2 sons, Nadav and Avihu, being killed. First thing is, I'll just tell you an interesting point. Nadav and Avihu are the names of Aaron's sons. This is the first reference that we have among the Jews, because it's just post-Torah right now, that you name your children for your parents. And not only that you can name cross-gender. You can name a boy for a mother, or even a girl for a father. We do it. You know, people do it. Right? You know, sometimes it sounds silly, like Yakoba or something, but you do it. Here is Nadav and Avihu. So Avihu, he is my father, Avihu. So here he's naming for he's naming for his grandfather, right? Because his father was Aaron, he's still alive, but his grandfather, Nadav. Aaron's kid. So Aaron named it for his father, his own father, right? Who was Moshe's father also, right? Avram, right? Avihu. He names him for his father. Nadav means to give. Right? A nadava is a gift. So Nadav was for his mother. That was his mother. His mother was known as a giver. So he named in a discreet way, but he named him for his son for his mother. The commentaries tell us that that's the first reference we have to such a thing. That's where it comes from. So Nadav and Avihu, it says they went into the Mishkan on this first day, right, that they were asked to do something, and they decided to invent their own ritual. Instead of doing just what God said, they decided we're going to do even more than God said. God says we should do this. We're going to make spices, and we're going to burn these spices, right? Because we want to show how close we are to God. Right? Well-meaning. And God kills them. Because God didn't tell them to do that. You can't invent ritual. You can't invent Yom Kippur. You can't invent, right? Okay, tomorrow we're going to be atoning for our sins. Everybody should come to shul. We're going to fast tomorrow, right? It's not the same. You can't say, okay, tomorrow we're going to have a Passover Seder. Well, it's not Passover. So what? What's the difference? We'll just make a Passover Seder. We'll make it Passover. You can't do that, right? You can't invent things. The Gemara says that there were a number of things that they did that were the cause of this. One was that they got drunk, or they were under the use of drugs that caused them to do this. And that's why would these holy people, they were supposed to take over. When Moshe and Aaron died, none of them were supposed to take over. They were that special, and yet they got killed. It says that they thought, we've done everything we can humanly do to become close to God. Like, we're very close to God. We've done it. We've worked on our personalities, worked on ourselves. We're kind. We do everything we're supposed to do. So we decide we want to go a little bit closer. So we're going to alter our mind. We're going to use a drug to help us. This is a very common belief that people have. Artists think this, right? Back in the 60s and 70s, all the art musicians used to use drugs and say that the music they made on drugs was so much better. When now we can look back and see it was terrible. That, you have people like Eric Clapton, who was a great guitar player, became a heroin addict. When he was a heroin addict, his music was crummy. But before and after, he's great. But if you'd asked him at that time, he would have told you he was terrific. Because in his mind, he altered his mind. He used drugs to expand himself. I can understand what they were doing and why, but the Torah is telling us that that's not right. The way you become close to God is using the abilities that you have with everything that you have. Not by altering your mind and using a drug to bring you closer, or drinking to bring you closer. It could do it, but that's not how we do it. That's not the way what we do, right? There are some religions that do that. There's a fact, right? For instance, a person who drinks enough to get drunk but not enough to be sick, right, can often have very, deep thoughts, deep ideas, can say things, can be creative, right? But it doesn't work for a long period of time. It just doesn't do it. That person will ultimately fail. So that's one of the things they said that they did. Another was that they felt that they could take over right then for Aaron and Moshe. There's a quote that says, "When are these old people going to die so we can take over?" So of course I really doubt that they spoke that way. They were great people, but the point was that they were looking to take over. So that was the opposite of what I said in the beginning. When we talked in the beginning about how a person who's going to be the leader has to be the person who doesn't expect to be a leader, who expects, why am I any better than anyone else? But they certainly had this certain amount of, arrogance might be too strong a word, but they had this idea, and that was a flaw for them. So they had numerous things that it says that they did that was incorrect. But the bottom line was that they were well-meaning. They wanted to become close to God. They did not want to do something wrong. They wanted to do something super right. And the Torah is telling us that that's not what's expected of us. So they ended up dying, and it says that they died, that their bodies looked perfect when they were dead, because what had happened is that they had taken these pans and put spices and lit it on fire, right, in the temple. And it says the fire entered into their bodies and killed them, so that on the outside they looked normal, but they were dead. The idea being is that it's telling you that there was a flaw internally in them, not a flaw, right, that you could see. It was a very subtle flaw. But because of who they were and the level they were on, they were judged like that. You see, we understand that from the Torah that God judges people based on who you are. Like, God is not going to judge a person who has no arms that they didn't put on tefillin. They have no arms. So he can't judge you badly for not putting on tefillin. You don't have any arms to put on tefillin, right? A person who the doctor says you're going to die if you don't eat pig, God is not going to hold you accountable for eating pig if that's what saves your life. Right? Those are all facts. We know that God only judges a person based on who they are. So if you expound on that and you go beyond that, then God will judge a person really only on each one of us based on our gifts. Who am I? If I'm a regular person, I'm judged on that level. If I'm, let's say, I'm born with the ability that I'm always on time, and then I start coming late. So that means I'm corrupting myself. It's easy for me to come on time. Somebody else, it's very hard to come on time. They can't come on time. It's really effort for them. If they come on time and I come on time, they should be rewarded. I shouldn't be rewarded. For me, it's natural. If they come late and I come late, I should be punished because I'm breaking a natural attribute I have, and they're acting normally. Right? See the difference? So everyone has to be judged based on who they are. Nadav and Avihu, being great leaders, are judged very, very precisely. What they did wrong, you and I, if we do it, the same thing, right, then we wouldn't be judged like that. What they did, right, that they wanted to get so close to God that they burnt this incense, it tells us that we can't go inventing rituals. But if we had done that same thing, we probably would have been praised. Because we're not on that level. But because they were, there's difference. Like Moshe. What did Moshe do? He couldn't go to the land of Israel. He hit a rock instead of talk to it. Right? Because of that, God wouldn't let him go into Israel. I will promise you that if we were in the desert and the Jewish people were coming for water, and you and I hit a rock and said, God is bringing forth water from this rock for you, right? And water comes out of that rock, we would not be punished for that. Even though God said, talk to the rock, and we hit it. Because we're not on Moshe's level. Moshe's on an enormous level of spirituality. He's judged much more specifically. On the one hand, you want to be on that level because you get all the reward of being on that level. On the other hand, you have to realize that you are also going to have a negativity, that you have to be very good at what you do because you will be judged very firmly. Okay? That's it. So I think that's it for today.
Thank you.
Yep. So we'll continue. I'm working now on a event in memory of Marcia for her 30th day. That'll be a week from Sunday. So I'm just working on getting a speaker, and you'll be seeing information on that soon. Okay?
Good.